Well, two gentlemen are here with us anyways to weigh in on this subject matter. Professor Jideofor Adibe is of Political Science and International Relations at Nasarawa State University, Kefi. He's also founder of Adonis and Abe Publishers. Sitting beside him is Sani Yabagi, who is the former chairman of Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's get your reaction first of all. From what you've seen, Prof, I'm start with you. The breakdown that Jide did give, what stuck out for you?
Well, the dynamics, there are so many things that you can take away, but none of them can be frozen in time. Because these things, there are time and space dimensions when you talk about politics and calculations. Yes, we don't know the impact of this is our own. This is the president, this is the need to, support the president. That's what might come, and it has to play around the side of increasing hunger in the land. If you notice, they say the highest food inflation in Ondo State. I believe we're talking about the Ondo social media and the Ondo. Are we focusing specifically on
all of them, everything.
So let me make it a little easier. Okay. I mean, for me, let me start from the very end. Towards the very end, when he's initially, I was looking at the papers. The papers are quite interesting, and the price differential as as each year was going for the same paper and how much it finally cost. He was looking at the Punch newspapers. Okay. But let's talk about, I want us to start from the INEC announcement. He was talking about, how much time the president really has. Okay. Before INEC makes an announcement, and then we start the next cycle for looking for the next president. Okay. What impact do you think that usually has on our democracy and the ability of politicians to be able to deliver on governance, which is what the people have elected them for?
Well, I can tell you, campaign, people are already talking about 2027. Even though that not much has happened on the ground. And most of the things you see now will be a combination of propaganda and a combination of things that people will get votes, not necessarily things that will be in the medium term. They will be looking at what you can call low-hanging fruits. So you go now and start a massive road infrastructure project, because these are the things politicians will point out. If you're trying to invest in human capital, say, for example, investing in education, people will say, we haven't seen what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So the way we think makes politicians to be very short-term oriented. Mm. And they've spent 1 year saying, for me, that 1 year has moved forward to the past. Mm. Because basically all the things you call reforms are what Babangida tried. And I did research on that structural adjustment. Basically, all the IMF World Bank recommendations of the 1990s, the remove subsidies, privatize, and all these things, and none worked. Even in Ghana, where the Bretton Woods institutions sunk in a huge sum of money just to make a success, there was no sub-Saharan African country that is succeeded.
We'll come to that. Yeah. I want to ask Mr. Yabagi if that is healthy. The fact that this is the focus of politicians, the fact that they now have to start looking for low-hanging fruits and short-term projects. How healthy is that for a democracy that is looking at long-term?
Well, Mope, I believe this is to demonstrate the fact that there's a very strong nexus between the economy and politics or democracy, as the case is. See, if you do not get your economy working for the people, whatever you are doing on the side of democracy or in terms of politics, will come to naught. And that's why the issue of the performance of Bola Tinubu in 1 year in the office, and the fact that by next year, like the gentleman was saying, that INEC will announce the timetable for the elections. So, which means there's a lot of catch-up that this government, the party in power, has to do to arrest the decline that they are experiencing since about 3 instances that he gave, where there was about 50% decline, especially in the Northwest and the Northeast, in the votes that the party got. And that is under a situation that you can even say was better than what we have today, as far as an average Nigerian is concerned. And the lot of average Nigerian has not improved. It has worsened. So if at all the politics, is to get the attention and the buy-in of Nigerians, then something has to be done about the economy so that they can see that, yes, there's something in it for us. So I believe that we, the politicians, have a lot to do, especially this government has a lot to do. It came with a lot of expectations, high expectations. People believe that Tinubu, being a Democrat, haven't seen it all, both within, in and outside, government, so people expected that something better, would have happened by now, especially when he started, by touching on the fundamental benefits that goes to the people, meaning issue of subsidy, issue of foreign exchange, unification, and things like that. Those are very, very basic to an average Nigerian.
And all of those matters and more are some of the issues we'll focus on when we return after this break. So stay on with us. All right, welcome back. Let's continue this conversation. Let me ask you. We clearly have seen politics, economy, they do mix because a lot happens with politics. When you in school, for the students, when you teach political science and all of these things, what impression do you get of them in terms of, because those days you have people who just feel it's just for the sake of it, just do it and then get off. Is that changing with the way things are playing out in this country?
Do you mean that the theory, there's no connection between theory and practice?
Exactly.
Okay, first of all, let me say a little about what he said about the nexus between economy and politics. It is, theoretically it is, but we have also seen that in practice, if that were to be the case, with Buhari, what happened under the Buhari government, where the cost of living got manifestly worse than what Jonathan left, there was no way APC would have won an election again if that nexus was to be very straightforward. There are other dynamics that usually come into play during elections. That will include the electoral empire, our own identity politics, and various other dynamics. So sometimes when the economy is so bad and you expect that there's no way we'll return this party in power, they end up coming back. And we saw with Buhari and Tinubu, that's by the way. The question of theory and praxis, people will always, try to rubbish theory. Even sometimes practical politicians will say, oh, this is theory they're talking about. And what we tell them is that even for you to move this table,
there is a
theory behind it that you need to apply a force. So we still have to study what they do, and be able to say this is politics the way it should be played. And then so that we set that benchmark, the norm. And when they're not living up to that norm, we say it's a deviation from the norm. That's not a critique on you, but on the political context.
Let's try and do this. If we could call it the big picture, let's stretch this. 25 years of this democratic dispensation. Yeah. And chances are, huge time, we still do it. We look at it almost in bits and pieces, expecting to be better every 4 years or every 8 years, depending on what happens. And time and again, we always see that when the new one comes, the old one is always demonized from what we've seen. So if you look at it, say, look, 25 years, after all, we heard former President Obasanjo the other day speak about homegrown democracy, saying that the way we adopted Western liberal democracy hasn't really worked for us. So if we look at it from that angle, from that perspective, what are we missing? 25 years of this democracy. Are we better or not? Prof, that's
okay. Well, first of all, I believe you're referring to is what they call policy sustainability and policy stability, because once a new person comes, they try to reinvent the wheel. It's clearly a problem. But on the question of, what we can do about it, this is the environment we are in. And we still have to find a way of sanitizing. There is no study, by the way, that I know of that is conclusive that if you are in a democratic dispensation, it necessarily leads to economic development. No study proves that. It's contradictory. Because if you look at the Asian tigers and the economies that developed, most of them came in as authoritarian regimes. Of course, we've had our own authoritarian...
So, it's not a function of the kind of system you have in place?
It never promises you. Democracy doesn't promise that there will be economic development. The argument is that in a democracy, you can use discussion to resolve conflicts, and that in the long run, being free, that's why it's called liberal democracy, and all the freedoms that come with it, in the long run, it will benefit. But of course, in the short run, because we are coming from an authoritarian background, in the short to medium term, it tends to aggravate the structures of conflict because there are so much bottled up feelings from our authoritarian past. So it never, in the short to medium term, you see, it's likely to create more problems. That's why some people call it illiberal democracies. I think that's often the mistake people make, to think people talk about dividend of democracy. There is no promise in academic research that says once you are democratic, you are going to.
So is that your tacit support of what the former president was talking about? Let's have a second look and see how we can make things better.
No, not in our own democracy. What I'm trying to say is that every democracy is different. If you go to Scandinavian countries, others, there are various moods. And if democracy, one of the early arguments, if it's supposed to help you select your leaders, then you ask yourself in our own, of the billions we select, do the outcome of the elections reflect the wishes of the people? If it doesn't help you to recruit, in our own case, what happens that because of the fear that whoever controls the state power will use it to privilege its in-group and disadvantage others, it tends to be anarchic. And because of the anarchic character of politics, it doesn't even give us anything. We don't get anything. That's the argument of this thing. And of course, the practical politicians who have...
practical, that being is you. Yeah. When I mean politicians that have been accused of demonizing this structure and this system, leaving us where we are today, that if they had behaved better, we might have been in a better place.
No, I want to disagree with the professor.
Go ahead.
Because I believe that democracy is still the best form of government anywhere in the world. Why? Because it establishes permanent...
You qualify liberal democracy or...
Well, liberal democracy or democracy as we know it, in this country, in any form at all, if you have democracy, it presupposes that government that you have in place is at the instance of the people themselves. And that introduces permanent, a kind of permanent interest in the survival of that system, unlike the other autocratic systems that he's talking about. Autocratic systems revolves around individuals. So like the military, you see, their own interest is short-term. They have short-term objectives, that's why they become more corrupt than what you find, in the systems, in democratic systems. So that's why I don't agree that the nexus between growing the economy and having a stable politics, is diluted, by what he says he called primordial systems, and then the fact of state capture and things. All those things are things that I know what you call teething problems in any system at all. There's no system that starts and then germinate and become strong.
This is our reality.
All at once.
This is our reality. As a matter of fact, if you asked any of the military leaders that intervened in our previous democracies, the excuse they always give is, the fact that the democracy wasn't working. We are in a hurry just a moment. We're in a hurry for development, and it would seem that the people were yet to see the proceeds of development. They were not feeling it, as it were. And in a plural society like ours, where there's so many other competing factors. He spoke about identity politics. It does appear that it has stunted the growth of our democracy.
No, it has. I think what rather it has done is that it has perhaps, given a different dynamic, to the growth of our democracy, because it isn't something that you can say it's not part of you. primordial sentiments talk about is part of us. It's like, you know, we have what we call triple heritage, you know, as Africans. So yeah, so the issue is that you have to understand the dynamics of what an average African has to put up with, you know, before you talk about how much has he fared in experimenting with this foreign-grown democracy, like, you know, Obasanjo is now saying that we should try homegrown democracy. The point I'm making is that if you care to investigate, really, our economy today, believe you me, when you talk about state capture and all these things, you can still trace it to the military administration, because it's either people that the military supported, you know, and they become more inclined to serve the interests of the military. And then look at the banks you have, look at everything. You know, when you want to talk about the billionaires that sometimes they are the military. It's not. You don't find civilians in big numbers, you know, that control our resources even today as I speak. So the people that grow the interests of the people on a permanent basis, you know, are the civilians themselves. Because
I'm sorry, but I don't understand.
I think with due respect, I don't think what I meant was that democracy, doesn't work with development. I'm saying that there's no promise. The argument of democracy is that you have freedoms, and those freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. If you go to free speech jurisprudence, one of the reasons they argue for that, they say through free speech you discover the truth. Another is that there's a distrust of government. But there's nothing that promises you that democracy leads to development. In fact, if you study the Asian tigers, it seems to be a little authoritarian. We are not glorifying them.
Prof, we are not trying. Hopeless, you know, system.
No, let's understand it.
I'm not supporting it. I'm saying that there are freedoms that people believe, that which then in the long run, because you're free, and when there are conflicts, you use peaceful means to resolve the conflict. But if you look at the history of China, China and even India, they tend not to be purely that democratic. That's the argument. Of course, you can argue we have had our own authoritarian era in the military, and they didn't lead to economic development. The point is, there is no causation between the democracy and economic development, at least in the literature. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying
in practice, I think, you know, freedom is priceless. I don't know how much you can put as a price on freedom.
Yes,
so to have freedom, that enables you to, as a human being, you know, be able to think out of the box, be able to solve your problems, you know, and then it also guarantees sustainability of policies, and then practices that you have, which translates into economic growth. Because what is economic growth? You know, it's the activities. When you talk about GDP and things like that, it's the totality of what you do as individuals, as corporate entities, and what have you. So when you free those energies, you don't, you know, put them in chain. Then what you have is a very, very fast growth in terms of, you know, what comes out as benefit. Yeah, but the problems we're having today, every nation that you see, every nation, you mentioned China, Singapore, or whatever, or India, or to that extent, even America, they went through this stage because it is the failures, the complications that you have that determines how successful you become end of the day. The pains we are going through today, under even this administration, you can see the amount of energizing that it has done to an average Nigerian. People are thinking beyond the way we normally think, you know, which I think was a kind of, you know, laissez-faire, you know, kind of attitude, you know, to issues that, you know, that concerns them. Look at how Nigerians are today, you know, beginning to question, to hold power to account.
Are they?
I think they are, because
why are they doing it?
Oh, look at what Labour is doing from the Labour point of view. The man that left here now, you can see the kind of, you know, that are challenged, you know, they are put up, you know, to the government. And when you go out, look at how people are coming out, you know, on the streets. Even from Southwest, where Bola Tinubu is from, you know, people are saying we can't take this. Okay. You know,
but
enough is enough.
What I want to know is whether we understand just how democracy works, what the expectations really were before politicians romanticized this in such a way and overpromised on what the outcomes of a democracy will be. Very much like how you hear the song, the expectations of what will happen in the year 2000. I mean, there was a lot that was really, really promised, and what our democracy. And every time you hear politicians campaigning, you hear about the dividends of democracy. Do you think that politicians really understand what democracy is about and how it's supposed to bring about this development? Because what we understand is that the freedoms is what will eventually bring about the development. But even the freedoms today, in some respects, are being stifled. So do you think that politicians truly get it before they begin to embark on their slew of campaign promises?
No, Mope, this is not a mechanical system. It's a social system. It takes time. It's a process that it takes.
How much time?
It's not moving. It's not like moving this thing from here to here. That easy. No. You're talking about human beings. You're talking about the orientation, the thinking. How to get the person to perform or to behave in the manner that you want him to behave. That is not, and this is under democracy. That's under freedom. It's not under military, where you can just wake up and then somebody chunk out whatever kind of laws he wants to chunk out. To say nobody goes out and you don't go out. No. So this is something that takes time. It takes patience. We must have patience with this because it's the best form of government. And anything that's good takes time. It doesn't come just like that. So we are moving forward. I'm not saying we are not making mistakes. I'm not happy, the stage we are, but we are not where we were, under the military. Today Nigeria is a pride, of Africa, in the sense that we have practiced democracy for half a century, unbroken, and we're still discussing democracy here.
Prof, do you agree with him?
Well, let me just say also put this. In countries where the basis of statehood and nationhood are still contested, where the basis of statehood, nationhood, not even nationhood, statehood is contested, there is a risk that in what we call transitional democracy, those transiting from authoritarian to, it's still a journey. That because, as I said, in the short to medium terms, there are structures of conflict that are aggravated. So instead of the nation-building process moving linear, so many centrifugal forces are let loose. And we can see it in the weaponization of ethnicity during election. So that what we call the social distance, the sense of community among the various constituent parts of a nation become wider. And nobody can tell me that it's not wider now. So that's part of the process. So if you look at places like Rwanda, that people now like to romanticize, Tanzania under Nyerere, they tend to be strong, little, not too much of that kind of freedom. I'm not advocating there will be no freedom, but I'm just trying to say this is what we should expect when you unleash liberal democracy in a country where the basis of statehood remains contested. Then it aggravates the structures of conflict. So that even now the separatist agitations are growing, the southwest, not everywhere. So is it then, I think that's what Obasanjo had in mind when we was talking about that we need to adapt it. We like the freedoms.
You think we should?
Yes, of course. We need to find a way. For example, when we are talking about adapting it, for example, some of us believe that we should have, there have been several recommendations, for example, rotational presidency, having a kind of presidential council, presidential council, so that, look at what happened. Under Buhari now, we are talking about Fulanization. Under Tinubu, we are talking about urbanization. So the social distance is being widened.
Well, I think if the politicians agree with that, that's why they are now looking at the national anthem and going back to those tribes.
But that is, for me, that's shadow boxing. Is that the problem?
What do you make of that? Are you happy with the process that has?
It's just shadow boxing. It's the same thing that has worked for others. Is it the letters that will? You see, I think they are leaving the substance to chase the shadow. So what does it change? Does it change the cost of food, price of food in the market.
You don't think that even the singing of it every day
so when you're hungry...
I would have thought that the nostalgia, because that was what was sang in your time, would at least, make you want to support that.
Exactly. The lyrics.
Is that what you're motivated with that?
You know what, there's that melody and the lyrics, that you don't find in Arise or Compatriot. But I think it's a way of giving us a kind of breather. Let the country, let us for once
something else to debate.
Exactly. So not distraction per se. It's a way of bringing in some softness in the whole thing that is called Nigeria. So that people will now begin to appreciate who we are. We've come a long way, believe you me. And the fact of the matter is that this country we have so many sectoral issues that no matter what you do, there's no way you can take us back, to where we are coming from. Like beyond the music, that's the only thing you can do, perhaps. But in the practical terms, that Nigeria will go back to be what we used to be, in terms of people looking more, at each other from the perspective of, what language does he speak?
Well, are you not concerned that this national anthem, this one that we brought back now, was written for us by colonialists?
Exactly.
You're not concerned about that?
I'm concerned. We talk about freedom here, isn't it? Yeah. And we talk about pride. And I say Nigeria is a pride, of Africa. So if we are a pride of Africa, we shouldn't bring in sentiments or things that define us in a different...
so some part of our freedom has been taken away?
Well, to me, I don't know what informed what they're doing. Somebody told me that perhaps they're trying to fly a kite of this parliamentary system. Maybe you want to jettison presidential system. That's why you're bringing the music of the parliamentary system, to now start getting Nigerians to start thinking in that direction. I don't know. There's people that are thinking that.
But you support it. You like it.
The music? Yeah, the musical aspect of it, maybe. But not the substance of it. Because the substance of it is that we are retrogressing in terms of building an independent nation called Nigeria that has outlived those colonial experiences that we want to get out of our system.
And many who don't like what has happened feel they never got a chance to get their voices heard of something they're supposed to be part of.
Exactly.
So they feel the freedom which you speak about
yes.
was non-existent in this case.
Yeah.
And those are part of the reasons why they feel question mark about this quote-unquote freedom which we keep talking about.
Yeah.
But Prof, we're winding down now. Give us your concluding thoughts.
Well, I think if you go to that anthem...
it doesn't have to be on the anthem. It could be January.
I know. Well, let me just say that 1 year, people say is 1 year too short, to assess a regime. I think what we should ask is the government came with a renewed agenda, a renewed hope. Is it what they say?
Renewed hope.
So we ask yourself, are you now more optimistic of this country now than you were before 1 year ago? Yes, I agree that sectorally, you have to look at it in terms of sectors. Because if you use your intuition, you may be wrong. Yes, in one or two areas, you can say in Muslim ticket, it hadn't, they seem to have managed it better than we thought they would do. But in terms of taking us back, Buhari was nepotistic. This government has pested Buhari in nepotism. At a time people are just dying of hunger and hardship and everything. You look at the nature of appointments, you ask yourself, do you want to build a nation? You want to, at a time we say from,
all right,
are we moving forward? Economy, even at the time things are very tough, you are using 90 billion to support pilgrimage. At a time people are complaining, you are using trillions, what is more than the budget of 36 states combined to build a coastal railway. Is that not a misplaced priority?
Final thoughts?
Well, my final thought is that I think our president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, should go the whole hog, especially in addressing the issues of subsidies. Because subsidies are not just about the people that enjoy subsidy, Nigerians alone, that should bear the brunt. Those who brought us to this abyss must be dealt with, must be brought to book.
All right.
So I believe, the billions that were stolen, they are not spirits. They should bring them to book so that we will have a total solution. Because that is why whatever we are doing today, unless you deal with the issue, half measure cannot solve our economic issues.
Maybe put differently, the billions that were said to have been stolen. Because what I'm saying, if it's stolen by now,
our books say
would have happened.
The books say it.
Well, I don't know which book though, but we have to thank both of you for coming on.
The book is not holy.
Former chairman of Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, and Professor Jideofor Adibe of Political Science and International Relations at Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Thank you both for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you
very much. Thanks.